Are we ready to talk about goddamn Avengers?
Is this the non-spoilers version first?
Yes,
Right.
this will be the non-spoilers version.
The generic opinion, not referring to specific
Yes.
occurrences.
Yeah.
Which is hard because we're all living in a post-spoiler conversation world now. I don't know if you guys have had post-spoiler conversations, but I have. So it's kind of interesting to like put back in my mindset of like, oh
Yes,
yeah, the movie was good. It was
Yeah,
So
I
it's
expect
gonna
we'll
be
get
interesting.
about 10 minutes out of this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Well, actually, EJ, I did have a quick question for you because I could be totally wrong, but were you someone that actually came across was it like leaked footage or like
Yes.
before? Yeah. So like, thank you for your public service announcement. But was it deliberate? Like, could you not see it, or was it one of those things where it's just too late and you saw what they said?
Oh no, I'm a very non-spoiler person. I don't think it's gonna ruin my experience. I don't particularly care. There's certain things like I personally have investment in that if I could, but no, it popped up on Twitter, and you know, from what I heard, it wasn't crazy stuff, and it was interesting seeing the leaked footage and then seeing what leaked on screen. I was like, oh, this is a whole different experience. It's so much better still in theaters. Like it didn't take it away. So it was interesting. All that happening and all that didn't affect my experience. I still had a good time with the movie. I still have problems with it. I still like it. It's the first time, and I guess this would be my like little kind of brief unspoiler stuff is like it's messy, and I feel like Marvel didn't go for making their manufactured run-of-the-mill template film. Sorry to shade MCU fans, that's always been my issue with them. I do feel like they have their template, they stick with it. This is the first time they were like, I just kind of want to do what I want to do. And I said it in my non-spoiler video that I felt like they flexed all their muscles. I felt like Disney used all their budget, they used all their actors. It felt so big and ballsy and eventy, and for us calling this an event movie, the movie felt like an event, and that was good to see that it matched both ends. And it's not perfect, it gets messy, I don't want to say plot holes in a bad way, but there's stuff that I'm like, well, if I think about that, no. No. But also, who cares? That's the beauty of it, is I walked away like, oh, that was a little weird, but also who cares? And that's they stuck the landing at the end, and that's how you do it. Like you let me walk away from that movie going, that's cool. I'm really glad I saw that.
Yeah, there are definitely plot holes, but they don't matter. They don't take you out of it. Like that last scene is definitely creates some plot holes, but it doesn't matter. It's just so good. And I agree, it is a bit of a mess. My initial reaction when I first saw that movie it was the first post that I made on Facebook about it was just, that thing is not a movie. And I didn't.
That was so ambiguous. I literally wish I could have saw none of your other thoughts into the podcast, because I saw that and was like, what? What? I need to know everything.
Because I mean, and seeing it for a second time, it does have a 3-act structure. It is very organized in the way you would organize a movie, I guess. But it's just weird. Like it plays, I guess it plays like it should play, as like the capper for like 22 movies. I'm really surprised that
it's like the Rolling Stones doing their last show ever. That's what it felt like. It was like this, wow, you guys are just playing every song you have 30 times in a row.
I'm super surprised that not because it's a bad movie, but I'm super surprised that the critical reception hasn't been more mixed. Because if you come to this as not like a fan, or haven't been like really part of being into these movies for the past 10 years plus, like this, I can't imagine this thing playing real well.
I will say I had a press screening for it. They made me drive to Disney for it. Stupid Disney.
Yay, Disney! You finally went. You finally went. Yay!
Well, I went to Disney Springs. Hold on, I went to Disney Springs. I didn't go to full Magic Kingdom, but I still went all the way.
You're almost there.
Yes, it was still, which I liked Disney Springs. I'll visit again. I'll give Disney that credit. But no, I saw it there, and it did shock me, Alan, to literally hear no critic as I'm leaving go, no one was like, that was whatever. Like, all of us had an experience there. And I do think that's why the critical scores so well, because even me, who has had MCU problems from the start, still looked at that and was like, damn, like, that is an accomplishment in film in general. I'll give it that. I think it's something pretty damn awesome. And I think all critics kind of, I would hope at least would respect that. I still think in your reviews you can be like, we have issues, but I think overall it's your post was right. That thing isn't a movie. It is truly an event. It is like a WrestleMania sports event. It's something big. It's just this thing, and I think that's why I think critics are kind of digging it, because it is kind of like, I'm not gonna be mean to this kid's favorite toy. Like, I'll just, fine. Like, I'm glad. Like I said, I liked having that experience of being like, well, like, I'm not the big MCU fan, so when people were cheering for stuff in this movie, that I was like, oh, that's something I should care about. Yay! But I liked that stuff.
I feel like I mean, I won't go as far as to say that, like, hi, I am the non-MCU fan coming in, but I mean, I have not seen every film that has come through the MCU universe. And hang on, MCU is the MCU. But so many thoughts running through my head. Basically, yes, my criticism of the film was that it was messy. And I think that, if you're a real hardcore fan, if you know loads of the backstories, if you know things happen in the comics, if you're just probably a little bit more invested than I am, that's not a problem for you. But it was something that I couldn't quite get past. I'm not saying I didn't still really enjoy it. It was a great film, but I was surprised that, as you said, the critical reception has been so generous. I think, I mean, obviously I was massively avoiding reviews like plague, but every now and then when, there's just like a little advert clicking, all I saw was 5 out of 5. And for me, it's not a 5 out of 5. It's probably a 4.
Yeah,
it's probably a 4, maybe 3.5 if I'm feeling particularly bitchy. That does not mean I didn't. That does not mean I didn't enjoy it. Yeah. And there were great things that happened. There were unexpected things that happened. And also, I am very much coming from a point of view where, for me, overhype is the worst thing for a film. So although I hadn't gone looking for these reviews, all I had in my mind when I went in was, everyone has said this is 5 out of 5. Wow, rolling up my sleeves, sitting down, I'm ready for that. And then it's not. But I think that's my problem. I don't have to put down everyone else.
Yeah, I try to avoid hype in general these days. Yeah. I think
it's ruined stuff.
Yeah, it did, because honestly, my last bit of hype was for The Dark Knight Rises. Like, I was super excited for that movie, and that movie is probably not a bad movie, but I was so excited for that movie that when that movie came out and it was whatever the hell it is, I was just like, like I still don't like that movie because of that. So I try to keep my expectations in check, and I was really, really able to do that with Infinity War because I didn't like the previous 2 Avengers movies. I liked the movies that the Russos had worked on before that, but I have historically not liked the Avengers movies. So going into Infinity War, I was like, okay. Whatever. I mean, I hope this is good. It looks like it could be. And then I enjoyed it a lot. But going into this, especially coming off of really liking Infinity War and this being a direct sequel to that, I had a lot of hype and expectations unwillingly. Like, I tried to purge that and tried for it to not be there, but it was just there. So I really expected, like, halfway expected to go into this and be let down. And honestly, with as much as they had to do in this movie to put a cap on all of those movies, it's too much. It's a big burden for them to have done that.
Yeah.
And yes, it ends up being messy, but also I can't really point to anything in this movie and be like, that's where you could have tightened that up. Like,
yeah, it was almost an impossible task, really, to like. And I agree with you. Actually, I'd sort of forgotten to make that point. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed Infinity War. against you guys, I did like the first Avengers movie, but I really hated the second
this
one.
woman.
I'm with her.
I hated the second one, and then I fell out a bit. Actually, that was probably the whole. That's where I sort of stopped watching these films. You know, I didn't see Doctor Strange. I didn't see the second Guardians of the Galaxy. These are all films I intend to go back and watch now. Definitely.
Yeah, you dropped out.
I'll probably
when it
help
got
out with
good.
a couple of things that happened
you're
in this
gonna
most recent one.
Confused for a couple parts. Ooh, girl.
Yeah, I'm making it even like all the time zone, like all the like time frames, making it even more complicated for myself. But so in fairness, it's like it's not Endgame's fault. But I remember I didn't go to see Infinity War reluctantly. That's not fair. But I kind of just went along to see it because I had the time, and then I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. So in fairness, as well as other people's hype, I think I struggled to not hype it myself because I was like, well, Infinity War was great. So yeah, that's what I'm expecting here.
I was kind of the, I guess not the opposite, just a little bit different with how I felt about the first two. In like having just seen them both in theaters and then not really gone back to them, I liked the second one more than I liked the first one. But in the past couple weeks, I've gone back and watched both of them, and I think the first one is technically a better movie. It's more of a cohesive narrative, and the
That's
second
what
one,
I like about it.
the second one is just raging nonsense. It is like 70% absolute horseshit. Like none of it makes any sense, but I ended up liking it more.
That's where they lost me. I totally agree with that. One of the reasons I really liked the first one, which is Avengers Assemble here, I think it's just the Avengers in the US.
Yeah.
Is because I was just so impressed on a technical level by how well and how neatly everything was tied together, and how all of these characters were judged. Now, all of these characters were juggled. Now, obviously, what happened in the Avengers and what happens in Endgame, like Endgame character juggling is on a whole other level. But at that point in time, I was really impressed by them having, like, you know what, just the main Avengers to deal with. And then, in this film, you end up with, like, God knows how many, like 50 people? I don't even know.
Yeah, it's not impressive anymore looking at the character juggling of the first Avengers, but...
Yeah, but it was at the time,
yeah,
I felt.
He did a good job with that. I think that movie is incredibly flat. Like, visually, it's boring to look at. The only interesting things you have is, like, the color combinations of people's outfits. And there's just... I don't know. But, like, it does what it's supposed to do. And it's fine at that. But these, like... I don't know. These have, like, hit another level of things that I really like. Even when they announced Infinity War and what they were going to do with it, I was like, that's going to be a terrible mess. And it's not. Like, it's not perfect or you know, as tight as I guess it possibly could be. I mean, maybe it is as tight as it possibly could be, but it's good, and they balanced it really well. And with this, they had an even bigger task, and they didn't quite balance it as well, because there's just characters that get lost in the shuffle here.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you know, there's I almost spoiled something, but like, there's characters that pop up,
so
like
hard not to.
they pop up way late in the movie. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess you would be here, but this is the first time we're really seeing you. Okay, but I don't know. I think they did a good job with this one. Like, as good as they possibly could have to put a button on this. And it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like an event.
See, I was in a different area. Like, all of you are talking about how you didn't let yourselves get hyped. To me, like, I was hyped the moment I left Infinity War.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, as far as like marketing this film, they showed so fucking little of this movie in the lead up.
Oh yeah, because if you watch the trailers and you hear that they said that, you know, nothing past the first 20 minutes is in these trailers, you look at those trailers and be like, that's bullshit. And it might not be like, I don't know if I believe that that's the 20-minute mark where they cut off footage, but it ain't very far into it.
Like a couple of just like stupid action scenes. It's like, here's a shot and done. That's it. That's the only thing past the 20-minute mark. There's not a single line of dialogue beyond that.
No, not at all.
But it was just, it didn't allow you to, like, I don't know. You couldn't really, not to use a like wrestling term, but you couldn't really fantasy book this too much. Like, because it didn't tell you, it's like, here's what's going to happen. It's like, all right, here's the movie, go see it. But still, like, in my head, I had like set all these high expectations for it, and the film exceeded them. And like I told Alan last night after we left, after our second viewing, in my heart, I feel like it's a 4.5 film. But if you asked me what to change to make it a 5-star film, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how this could have been handled better.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. There's moments where I'm just like, that's lame. But, like, you know, it's fun.
And as a capstone, there's so much there for the fans. Like, no matter, like, your level of fandom on this, if you're kind of a neophyte and you've only seen the past couple movies, there's still a lot there for you. If you've been there for the full, 22 films, then there's some shit that's there for you. And I feel like they pulled all of that together so well. It's, like I said, it's just a great way to cap it all off.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything unspoilery to say before we take a break?
Oh no, we need to take a break because I have stuff to talk about.
Okay. All right. We'll take a quick break. If you're listening to the non-spoiler edition, you'll just be hearing the end of this show. If you're listening to the spoiler edition, we're about to get into that shit right now.
Well, let me go say bye to those people real quick, though. Bye. The people who haven't seen Endgame yet, you're a loser. No, I'm just kidding. Just bye, guys.
Damn.
Have a great time.
Okay.
Harsh.
Yeah, a little harsh, but, you know.
Okay.
We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Welcome to the spoiler side of the podcast, where we're going to spoil everything from Avengers Endgame. Every little thing. Meticulously.
It's going to get crazy, y'all.
I can't wait. My first thing is going to try to not talk about Captain America having America's ass for 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah, I thought of you, EJ.
Oh, I'm glad you did, because I'll start my side off with, I hated Tony Stark for a long time. And in these last couple movies, I slowly started to see him. And then him joking about Captain America's ass, I was just like, damn it, I'm liking you a lot. He was great in this movie. He is, I mean, we could talk about Robert Downey Jr.'s really great work in this movie, and he's had a good arc between his films. I mean, from Iron Man 1, 2, 3, the 2 Avengers movies, Civil War, but just within this one movie, he had a good arc, and I think that's what I liked about his story and what happened. We could talk about it. Oh, him dying, I think that was such a beautiful moment. I was surprised. Also, Gwyneth Paltrow pushing Tom Holland out of the way and saying, "This is my moment. Let me have it." Was great. I love that.
Yeah, that
was a bit like give the woman her husband for God's sake.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
who are you, kid? Get out of here!
Twink, get away out of here! Yeah, get away! Like, this is not your moment.
They had their moment. They had their hug. Let her get in there.
Well, even when Don Cheadle was there, I was like, move! You are like. You'll say something at the funeral, my friend. Like,
yeah. Who are you,
but
kid?
No, I totally agree with you, EJ, about Tony Stark. That was actually one of my first points. One of my most favorite parts of this film was Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, because I mean, I think I've seen all 3 Iron Man films, but like a long time ago, they've been a long time coming. And what I liked about Endgame, and his death was sad. Like I did shed a little tear. But it was really nice symmetry, because essentially Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, he launched the entire thing. He was the first main, like this, I think. He was the guy that had his individual films first. It's a long time ago. And then he has had an interesting arc kind of in previous films, but I liked how, maybe at the expense of other characters, didn't bother me that much. He got the lion's share of screen time, or one of the lion's shares of screen time.
Yeah.
And he kind of reminded me, like, I don't think he's necessarily really acting anymore. I think he just is Tony Stark. It's one of those parts where, like, he's been so successful with it, they've just kind of stopped writing as Tony Stark, and they're just writing Robert Downey Jr. But it works. Like, he's so natural at it. He just 100% embodies that role. And I really loved everything he did.
Well, I agree and disagree with that a little bit. I think in the first 2... he's just very good, and he's very good at playing that character. He's playing a character. And then in in the first two Iron Man movies, and then in the two Avengers movies and Iron Man 3, it's just the Robert Downey Jr. show, and it's kind of irritating.
Yep. That's where I tuned out of them, so I agree.
Yeah, honestly, until Civil War, which I thought he was very good in, I was just like, get him out of here and get somebody that cares. Like, what are we doing? But this, it's Civil War and then Infinity War and this, I think he's done a great job, and I think I think he has kind of it is Robert Downey Jr., but it's also still a character and not him just being a clown in an iron suit.
He delivers the dialogue really well, and I know he gets like a lot of the jokes, and he is this very laissez-faire character who's very sarcastic, which is obviously very appealing to English people. But he's just I just really loved him, and for me, he kind of made up for things I wasn't so hot on. Like, I still can't decide. EJ and I spoke about this briefly during the break. So, Fat Thor. I don't know. It's either a brilliant gem or just the weirdest tonal shift ever. I can't decide.
It was freaking amazing. Like, the fact that they had the balls to go, and it's like, you know what? We're just going to do a Rob Zombie Thor for this film.
I was gonna say he's every guy I swipe right on Tinder, so I was so into that Thor.
And
again, Chris Hemsworth, comedic genius, and he is bubbling up to a great comedic actor and still a good serious actor, because I think he's done well in this movie with his scene with Rene Russo, which, again, I'm not a MCU person, so I was like, what is she? Oh, she's a lot. Who is this person? I didn't know she was still around. I would love seeing her. So no, it was that was a ballsy choice. So I agree with you, Gerald. That was a choice they made.
And I guess as well, like I did, and so I saw it with a friend who's actually a doctor, and she raised a good point. I think it's true. She was like, it was really great to see a superhero in particular, a character actually struggle to deal with that amount of pressure. Like, he essentially, having a panic attack. And like, sometimes they were playing things for humor, but a lot of the time it was kind of the idea of like, actually, let's explore the enormity of what's happened and how that might affect someone. I did actually like that they did that, rather than, just being like, oh no, half the world's population has been wiped out and we're struggling to fix that. Oh well.
The way that they dealt with how all of the like core six were dealing with what happened, it honestly was really cool, because they had some that, you had some characters strive from it. Black Widow is essentially taken over S.H.I.E.L.D. And, she's found
she's
her...
not striving, though.
I mean...
She had, I think, one of the worst... you have a point, because I think she strived almost like in her professional life, but I think emotionally she took it hard, though.
Oh, no. She did. But she, like, through what happened, she kind of found her purpose, her place.
Yeah, okay.
So I liked seeing that aspect. Then you had Hawkeye, Ronan, who... Look, he had a character arc.
This is the most emotional character arc you've ever gotten out of that character. And if this movie didn't bring you around to Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye, nothing will, and nothing has for me, this movie included, because I still don't give a shit.
I liked it within this movie. I think opening the movie with him, especially not having him in the last, was fine, and
That was a good opening.
Yeah,
it was. Will briefly say, in the UK, we are much less, audibly reactive in the cinema. Whenever I see a film in the US, I'm always like quite shocked by how loud everybody is. Like, in the UK, it's silence. But obviously in this film, people were reacting. And when they did the snap on his family, there was like a... and I did think, I was like, oh, that's a strong opening. But yeah, I'll agree. I was a bit like, oh, Hawkeye's back. Wasn't he the one that like was written out of films and had a strop and it all got a bit awkward and no one knew what to do with him, and now he's back?
Yeah, it is a strong opening. I just halfway through, I'm like, they've given this guy a good character arc. They've done well with him. I still don't care. I think it's just
proved how bad they've handled him.
Yeah.
Like up until this point.
I think that character is the one character of the main Avengers. I mean, maybe Black Widow too. They've just really bungled it. Like, I feel they gave him some really good stuff to do in this film, some of which may have been an apology. Like, here, sorry, Jeremy, let's give you some good stuff to do now.
Sorry, you're a really good actor, and we've just not utilized you at all.
But I totally agree. It's too late, really. Yeah. Like, they're not planning on. Are they doing a Hawkeye show on the streaming service? Aren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that right? Disney Plus. Yeah.
They have like lightly, and it might be with his daughter, which would be interesting. That would be.
Yeah.
And just by the time they got to Vormir, though, even though I knew that one of them had to die, even though you've got Jeremy Renner, Hawkeye, who can bring back his family and go back to having a normal family life, and you've got Black Widow, who really has nobody but the Avengers, I was still like, no, let him die. Don't kill Widow. She's actually interesting.
Yeah, but we had our daddy death in this movie, and we couldn't have had two.
Yeah, and I also like that she sacrificed herself, and this is something female characters have a lot, is like either it's for like your husband or your kids, and she did it for her family, but for her own arc. And I think it really was pointed in that moment where she was like, oh yeah, he just mentioned my dad's name. I don't even know who my dad is. And it just really not that I think suicide's ever an answer, but I do think that was her time being like, I've never really had a point. Let me have a point now. And, in the context, it's not the greatest message to send out, but like, that moment I really thought she had to go. And I do like that they were both kind of like fighting for who gets to make the self-sacrifice, but it didn't feel egotistical. And I think that's, if it was a different movie, a Tony Stark doing that, I would have been like, bro, you're doing it just to be the Tony Stark moment, and at the end I feel differently, but that moment I was like, they're both literally just trying to figure out their own pain, and I did like that moment. And as much as I did be like, he should be the one to kill himself, because Jeremy Renner, that would probably be the coolest thing you'll ever do in an Avengers movie. It was the coolest thing she got to ever do in an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
They both needed that moment.
Yeah.
They both should have fell. Give me 2 soul stones. Like, Red Skull could have took it back. Who knows?
They were fighting for the spot. I really didn't go into this movie expecting Black Widow to die. So, but as soon as they were like both going to Vormir, I was like, it's probably going to be her.
Yeah. It's like, as much as I hate to say it,
sent them.
because I'm not one of those I called it type people, but I was like, one or two of the main guys are going to die, and then one of the kind of like side characters is going to die, and that's pretty much exactly what happened.
I will say that I did call on this very podcast. My main opinion was that they were going to keep Tony Stark alive and wheel him out every time they needed to sell a movie. But if they did kill him, then Cap wasn't going to die. He was going to go back in time and live out his life with Peggy Carter.
Yeah, thanks for ruining that for me. That's literally all I could think about. I was just like, when all this stuff was unfolding, I was like, and that is exactly what I was told by the people who know best on this very podcast.
Alan, I still think you're right. I think they did a very poignant thing. That's something that they're doing. I don't know if still in the comics. Tony's hologram at the end was very good. I think they can find a way to do hologram Tony more often. It's something they've done in the comics where it's like a projection of him, kind of like what Jarvis was and all that. But they've done it with Tony, and I would love to see something like that. I think they could still have him there. Though I think he needs to rest. And that was such a good line from Gwyneth Paltrow. I think one of my favorite lines in that movie was saying he can rest. As much as I do think RDJ needs to rest and let him enjoy his millions and millions of dollars and have his somewhat okay production company. I think this is. I think there's still opportunity for him. But yes, the Cap thing was so obvious though. At the same time, like as soon as Bucky was like, "Oh, I'll miss you," I was like, he's not coming back."
I mean, the moment that they were like, "He's the one taking the stones back."
As soon as they did that, I was like, "Yep, I was right."
But they still did good there because I like that. I felt like Bucky was the only one who knew what he was going to do. And I just thought like he had a moment of looking at him being like, I'm going to miss you, buddy. And I was like, well, he's only supposed to be gone for 5 seconds. And I was like, but Bucky knew. And I thought that was I'm a Stucky fan for life. Bucky and Steve should have been together dancing at the end. That's what I would have wanted, but I do love that they still had Bucky be the wise one there and be like, "Oh, I'm losing him, am I?" Like, but the end was so good, so plot hole filled with time travel and whatever, but still such a good moment.
I think they're going to try to retcon that and point to be like, yeah, they talked about Peggy Carter having a husband that she kind of kept to herself. You know, she wasn't really really public about that, because that has been mentioned in the other movies, but it still doesn't work because we've seen, you know, that she's like has his picture sitting on her desk from when he's like skinny and clearly like has a.
I'm going to go ahead and say, let's put a pin in that, because I want to talk about things we really liked about the movie. And then towards the end of the conversation, we got to talk about all the shit they fucked up.
Okay. Yeah, I liked the top half of this movie. The first two acts, the first act I really like. It really balances out being both bleak and desperate with also being funny.
Yeah.
Like when I like Banner. I like Professor Hulk.
God, Professor Hulk was so good.
Yeah.
So
does EJ.
The new love of my life. It was again, in Thor Ragnarok, when I saw Hulk's butt, I was like, okay, rude. And then in this one, when I was just like, oh, but Mark Ruffalo, like, in general, though, the CG on him was great. The character was great. I loved that first half as well. I thought the talky drama part of this movie was really great. Some of the best acting and script work from the MCU.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way they handle everything before the 5-year jump, I think is just tight. I think it's really well done. Them going off and killing Thanos, just lopping off his arm, and then Thor not wanting to hear any more of his shit and then cutting off his head.
That was such a freaking moment. Like, whenever you've got that decapitation, you're like, oh, that's the type of movie we're in now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like, they just fucking...
Also, can I just say very quickly around this area that Gary, editor of Flickering Myth, called that. He posted his guess of what would happen, and he called Thanos being killed and there being a jump forward in time of about 5 years, and I was very impressed.
Yeah.
And other stuff he got right too, but I had not thought of any of that. And I went back to read it and was like, yep, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, he was off. He wasn't full on right about everything, but like the broad strokes he got, like, and just from like hints and in the trailers and from things that leaked and like shots that leaked in the production and everything of them having like the wrist, the things on their hands and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's not like this movie was impossible to call. But just the way they handled it, you just wouldn't have really expected.
Right. But if anyone says they would have guessed that we would get Rob Zombie Thor, they were fucking lying.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Korg is my favorite character in Thor Ragnarok, so him living with Korg and Meek is
amazing.
So great.
I want to go ahead and say that about that introductory scene as a video game player. In my mind, at first I was like, come on, Fortnite's not going to be popular 5 years from now. But then I realized that like the world has just kind of been stagnant in the past 5 years.
Yeah, nobody's been doing anything.
And I was like, you know what? That makes sense. We haven't moved on. So yeah, we're just playing the same stupid game from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But like having them just chilling out, getting drunk and playing video games all day as a coping mechanism. Or as a coping mechanism for Thor, but Korg is just like, yeah, this is fun. Okay. That was great.
Yeah.
Even Valkyrie stepping up and kind of like having to take charge of New Asgard.
She is the new king. I love
I was so excited just to see her in it. I was like, oh my God, she survived the snap. There we go. There she is.
I'm excited to see the sequel where her and Captain Marvel are married and have kids because, oh man.
I've seen all of that shipping. Yep.
I don't want to make a character gay who's not gay, as I talked about Stucky earlier, but man, Brie Larson made choices in this movie that were great. There were some things in this movie with her look, the outfit at the end of the funeral. I was like, Carol, I'm seeing you, and I'm hoping we see good things as Rocket calls out her haircut.
Yeah.
Great character, underrated character as well. I still wish she had more to do in this.
I'm glad she didn't. I'm going to go ahead and just say that right now. And this isn't because, oh my God, powerful female character. She is the Superman of this universe. And I dislike her for the same reasons I dislike Superman, and that's that she is like unto herself a plot point. And that's that if there's ever a problem, you can be like, and then Captain Marvel comes and solves it for everybody.
Yeah, it was very Deus Ex Machina, like the official term, where she just swooped in at the end and saved the world.
Yeah.
And
Did
it
do
was
a good job of getting her out, though, I thought.
Yeah, but then I thought it was a bit awkward the way she was like, yeah, well, the universe is big. I'm going to be busy. Don't expect to see me for a long time.
I mean,
I immediately in my head was like, bookmark for later when she appears and just saves everybody.
It could have been written better, but I do think they, in their own movie, that they were like, because, and I've seen DC movies, animated ones, where like Superman, they have to be like, and then he got stabbed with a kryptonite something, and he'll be gone for 10 minutes of the movie. At least she was like, nah, bro, I have to go. And I thought that was a good way of getting that kind of Superman character out within their own movie context. Because it usually, yeah, like that character is a struggle, and I don't like her character for that same reason, but also at the same time, I am a DC fan, so the gods and monsters thing doesn't really bother me. I do like overpowered heroes.
Yeah, they kept her out well. They didn't bring her back well. I mean, but at the same time, that whole the way she came back was a little Deus Ex Machina, but that whole in battle was just relentlessly fan servicey. And at some points, I was like, "Yeah, that's really cool," and then at other points, I'm like, "That is lame as shit." Like it is that in battle is a roller coaster ride of me being like, "Cool, lame, cool, lame."
That was me in the second act when it became let's previously on the MCU. I was a little kind of tuning out. That was kind of my least favorite part, where I thought the end, like, I mean, the A-Force lineup with all the girls was awesome. Like,
no, I'm sorry, I disagree strongly there.
Thank you, Tori.
Again, same conversation with my friend Kat. It appeared, and I was like, "Oh, that's cute." And then I thought a second, I thought, "No, it's not.
These people don't know each other."
This is patronizing bollocks. This is some high-level Marvel person being like, "Ooh, let's appease the women.
Yeah.
Or let's put them all together and have a girl power moment." And then also the fact that the very point of this was for them to, help out Peter Parker, the little baby boys. It was all mothering as well, and I didn't like it. It was really fake.
And it's also like he hands the gauntlet to Captain Marvel. And who doesn't need any help?
Yeah,
she doesn't need the help. Exactly. Yeah, we've already established she has all the power.
It just so happens that all the women that
one
don't
use it.
Yeah,
that's why I thought that they. No, I guess I was so slapped in the face with the Russos doing that like 2-second gay character thing at the therapy session that I was like so insulted by that I was like, look, all the girls are here. I'm just a gay man that's like, yes, queen. I guess I just needed that moment.
Was it
of something?
Yeah, wasn't that one of the Russos?
Yeah, that was Joe.
Yes,
Joe. Speaking of that, like going into that, like the scene before that, seeing the trailers with the baseball field abandoned, and I was like, they'd still have baseball. And then as it was rolling up on that shot in the movie, which goes into that meeting, I was like, oh, that's Citi Field. That's where the Mets play. They wouldn't have the Mets. And the Mets would definitely be gone. And then like one of the first things that Joe Russo's character says is like, we both talked about how we missed the Mets. The bald guy in that sequence with the goatee is Jim Starlin, creator of Thanos and Gamora, Nebula, plenty of that. Cosmic.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. That's cool.
I'm gonna put half a pin in that because I kind of want to get my like impressions of the A-Force thing out there real quick. And even though yes, this scene obviously was pandering, and it was just like, let's just get all of the women on screen at once. I'm okay with that because this entire fucking film's pandering.
Yeah, I mean it's nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. Like I said, none of them know each other. There's no reason for all of the women to just show up at once.
I mean, we had the
area.
same scene in the last movie with the "She's Not Alone" sequence. So,
what
when the
with
fight,
Okoye and Black Widow and Scarlet Witch,
but at least they're already all in the same area, like a small battlefield, having the same, like being occupied with the same things. It's okay. Honestly, for the amount of people that's pissed off, it's worth being in there.
With as much fan services in this film, I'll give it to him.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, I had more questions of how the hell did Pepper Potts learn how to use that suit more than I had of like, well, these girls shouldn't be.
She used the suit in Iron Man 3.
Yeah, she uses the suit for a minute in Iron Man 3, but she comes out just blasting ass in this one.
Yeah, she has been. Her and Lil Morgan have been practicing.
Because she's just like coordinated. She's like, it's like synchronized swimming there with her and Tony like blasting things. A lot about that. Like I said, that battle is just up and down. And like, that's cool, that's lame. And one of the coolest things that what probably should have been one of the coolest things in that battle is Captain America finally lifting Thor's hammer, which kind of got teased in Age of Ultron. But I was in a theater full of nerds who cheered so loud at that moment that like
we had a reaction here as well, and I was again having kind of tapped out slightly on Age of Ultron, not liked it. I was a bit like, okay, this is something I've definitely missed. This seems to be a thing people were wanting to happen.
Yeah, me and my fiance both looked at each other with this look of like, that was kind of cool, but these people are dorks. Yeah. Like, it's ruined now.
And see, I was more excited for him using it after, not even him grabbing it the first time, because whatever, I smelt it coming.
Yeah.
It was in the leak stuff. But no, I was more excited when he threw that shield back and then threw the hammer back. That's when I was just like, oh, he knows how to use it. When he did the lightning, those were the moments that I was like, I love the MCU especially when Cap gets to fight, because I feel like they just make his fights so amazing. And so for me being like a wrestling fan, it's those mark out moments when I'm like, oh, he's the best fighter. I love watching him fight. So that's where I was like, oh, well, the hammer thing, whatever. But I was like, oh, he uses it. Great. Oh, thank God. So in my head, I was like, oh, he's been sitting there every time they battle. Like, so when I get the hammer, I'm going to use it like this. Like, this is how I'm sitting here thinking. And I'm like, good, Cap. I like you.
For me,
he's my favorite character. Oh, this was a good Chris Evans movie as well. I think Gerald was talking about it earlier. I think this movie isn't the greatest look at PTSD, and it's not like they handle it the best. But I do love that each character has their moment with it and felt that way. And I thought his arc was so beautiful, and I loved his ending. I loved Chris Evans. I think he has been a great player just as much as it's the Tony Stark show. Chris Evans has made this a good Cap show as well.
Yeah, he's been kind of the heart of it.
He is great. And also you kind of like forget that obviously this is not the first Marvel character he's played. And yet to me, he's just, you don't ever think about Fantastic Four anymore, do you? He's just Captain America. He totally embodies him. And I thought it was a nice ending for him as well because, we'd spoken about him leaving, and as was predicted correctly, you like him going back in time. So I like that he got his happy ending. It was really cute.
Yeah.
And now he can go off and be in a Disney musical or something fun like that. Yay. He so wants to be. The man loves Disney, and I'm here for that.
I enjoyed his whole arc, and leading up to this, going back and watch. I wasn't going to go back and watch all 20-something movies because that's ridiculous. I know some people did, but I don't have.
I have a friend who did the marathon at AMC. He did the whole 22 movie marathon.
I haven't the time, the inclination, the interest, but I did want to, follow a thread going up to it. And for the our other podcast, we just recently watched the first Avenger, Captain America: First Avenger, and the original Avengers. So I was like, I'm gonna follow the Cap path. I'm gonna watch Winter Soldier. I'm gonna watch Age of Ultron, Civil War, and then Infinity War. So I went into this movie with all of the Cap stuff very fresh in my mind. So, and I'm glad I did because I knew he was going away, but I didn't know exactly how he was going away. And I think it just works fantastic as a whole character arc for this.
My favorite bit, honestly, and going back to that scene where he wields Mjolnir, is wasn't the fact that he was able to grab it so much as like Thor's reaction of "I knew it," and it's just like going back because you see that little squeak of it. During Age of Ultron, where he's trying to lift it. And, it kind of brought back the idea. It's like, you know what? He probably could have lifted it then, but he didn't just because he didn't want to, outshine Thor.
Some people have the theory that he couldn't lift it then because he still knew the secrets about Bucky,
No, I've seen that.
killing Tony Stark's parents.
But I'm going to go ahead and say
he hadn't come out of the closet yet.
Spoilers. I mean, spoilers for a film that came out years ago and I haven't watched it, but still.
But I'm going to go ahead and say that Mjolnir doesn't have a kind of worthy setting.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not like, oh, I'll let him move it a little bit to show him that maybe one day. It's like, no, you're either worthy or you're not.
That's fair.
I also like that Thor wasn't petty about it. It is a great character arc for him as well, because he would have been such a sassy little bitch about it in any other movie. But this movie, as much as he went through and him tying up all his knotted up beard into that cool beard he got at the end of the movie, like his whole arc just in general, I think, and a lot of people I've seen complain that they have undone some of his arc and, you know, kind of rebuilding him as his character and using him for a lot of comedic, but I think he's going to be around for a little bit more. I think he is unfortunately going to be in the Asgardians of the Galaxy. I you know, the only thing I like, because I'm not a big Guardians of the Galaxy person, is I get to see Chris Pratt struggle to have charisma on screen next to Chris Hemsworth. So
I was thinking that when they did I really enjoyed the final scene, but I was like, oh, if he's going to be in Guardians 3, this is like a battle of the Chris's.
And it's not much of a battle.
It's too late for Chris Evans now because he did. But if it wasn't, just add a little sprinkling of Chris Pine and the internet would explode.
It's the Chris Quartet.
Now, one thing that I just want to throw in there real quick, just so I can make sure that I get this on recording because I loved it so much. In Infinity War, there wasn't a cameo from anyone who's been on the show Community. And it made me kind of sad because there was in Civil War and there was in
Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm. And I love that the Russos made up for it by having 2 cameos in this one.
Yeah, it's
they had Ken Jeong.
And I don't remember her name, but she was the
Yvette Nicole Brown.
Yep. And I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was Ken Jeong, and I was like, oh. And it looked like he went to say something and he got cut. So I wondered if maybe he had a slightly bigger cameo originally. But I was like, oh, maybe it's not him. He does barely anything.
So, I mean, it was just fun to have him come back. And like I said, I don't think it was a bigger role because they've had these like small bit roles, like just show in. And I think having him be probably one of the breakout stars from Community, like, because, you know, he had his own show. He had the Hangover series. So having him have the non-speaking cameo actually is even like better for it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I can see Yvette Nicole Brown play a character and be a snitch, that was fun. I liked her. I think her scene in context, I think that whole, as much as I told you, I kind of like did not love the middle part where we had to go back in time to all the other ones. I think the bit with them going to see Tony's dad and that little bit, and when we got to see the very obvious foreshadowing with Peggy, I thought that was a really fun little moment, and I think that's my favorite out of the traveling around through other movies, because didn't really love Nebula and War Machine, and the Soul Stone stuff was okay, just a little sad.
My favorite part of the time hopping was seeing Loki. I told you, although not nearly as much of him as I would like. And I was kind of sad. Like, I guessed that it was tying up into previous films. But obviously, when he got his hands on the Tesseract and was like, oh, disappeared. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah, we'll come back to that. And then we very much didn't.
We will on his DC Plus, or his Disney Plus show. Check that out this, whatever it comes out.
Yeah, haven't they just come up and said that, like, all of the film actors are going to be reprising the roles?
I think his will probably be one of the smaller ones, I will say, though. I think he's gonna, because I'm hoping that they do a kid Loki and or teen Loki at one point, and because it's something that they've done in the comics where they've like done a younger Loki, and I think it's a good way of like having him frame the episodes or frame the narrative of that show. That would be the good way of, because I don't see Tom Hiddleston
better be framing something.
I get to hear Tori be spicy about a actor.
I mean, you say that like the time heist was your least favorite part of the film, but it did give me like 2 of my favorite moments in the thing. Well, 3 if you count just having Tilda Swinton there. But one, I loved
Tilda Swinton, yes.
I loved when we got to see the intro to Guardians of the Galaxy again. And then it cuts away from their point to their point of view, and it's just him dancing around and singing poorly. And he's like, "So he's an idiot, huh?" And I was like, that's hilarious, because that's exactly what it would look like to any outside source.
That was a good bit. I honestly did like them going back into the first Avengers, because I was like, man, this is like a $400 million movie, and they are reusing footage from 7 years ago. That's weird.
But I love how much when they didn't reuse footage, like the Cap in the elevator scene, the Robert Redford scene. I like that they, as much as they did reuse footage, I love that they actually did play with that stuff so much. Yeah. And so, as much as I did have my faults, I will say getting Tilda Swinton and Robert Redford, Rene Russo, Natalie Portman, getting them all back for that little section was, I think it shows how much they respect this franchise, the fans. I thought that was a really cool thing.
Just brief interjection. Can I just say how massively oversold was Natalie Portman's involvement? Because as soon as she appeared at the premiere, everyone was like, "Oh my god, she's in it!" Like of all of the people that returned, I think they actually did say that the majority of her appearance was actually pre-recorded from previous films.
Yeah, the one bit you get to see of her like in action, like with her getting out of that bed, that is reused footage. And the only thing new she came in and did was a little bit of voiceover work that was in the background.
Yeah. And everyone was like losing their minds, being like, "What does this mean?" And I was like, "Well, in this instance, pretty much nothing."
Nothing.
Because I would have loved to see her in Rocket. Like, out of anyone working with Rocket Raccoon, like Natalie Portman, that would have been such a contrast of humans or characters. That would have been a very I get to see Natalie Portman, Academy Award winner. Another one in this movie dealing with the raccoon.
I was going to say, that would have been great use for Kate Blanchett as well.
Yeah. I'm surprised Harlow wasn't in this. Wow.
I know, it makes me a little sad. But
again, because they hit all the, a lot of the past ones, even the Frank Grillo, and I was like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, because I heard he was on set, and I was like, I mean, they got to be time traveling because there's no reason for that guy to be in flashbacks or, any other reason. There's no way he survived. He got blown up by the Scarlet Witch.
And that led to another one of my favorite bits from the time heist was when Captain America walks onto that elevator. Mm-hmm. They had the same damn actors from Winter Soldier in the same positioning in that elevator.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, here we go again.
He's just gonna beat their ass. But then he just leaned over and did the Hail Hydra.
That was so fucking great.
That was a good bit.
I loved it so much.
That was the most meme thing that they've been on point. Usually the Fortnite thing's gonna feel dated, but that Hail Hydra was such a pop culture moment, and when it happened in the comics, and we've all kind of know. And I also thought that was a good evolution for Cap. He didn't have to fight. He was smarter that time, and I was just like, look, Cap. He was just like, I'm just gonna say Hail Hydra, get the hell up out of here. I was like, good job, Cap. You've grown. The same thing with the Bucky thing when he's fighting other Cap, and he's like, Bucky's alive, and I was like, good, you've grown. You're smart. That worked at one point.
Oh man, but I'm gonna come back to the Avengers 1 whenever we have our bit on how they fucked up.
I mean, do we have anything other are we not on how they fucked up? I mean, we can go into how they fucked up now. I don't have anything else in particular to praise about this movie.
My other quick thing is I loved Scarlet. I loved Scarlet Witch actually getting her powers and being a little bit of a badass. I'm a big fan of her, the character, and I like Elizabeth Olsen. So that was a moment that I was like, oh, thank God we got to see her full power. Hopefully she can go maybe work with Doctor Strange to hone in her powers, because I would like to see that was a really cool moment. And I thought that was again, like you guys kind of were saying, that the ending is a little mismatch, hit or miss, but those were some of the best moments of me getting to see her.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, anything in that last battle that's a one-on-one with Thanos, Josh Brolin did a great job throughout both of these movies. And any one-on-one where somebody's having an interaction with him, he's great. He clearly, this character's clearly an idiot. This character is stupid and doesn't understand how anything actually works. Like, oh yeah, you cut the Earth's population down to like 1970s size. Great. Fantastic. What a big help. Thank you, asshole. Like, but the way he just says everything with such conviction, like, Brolin was perfect casting for that.
Another bit from that like final sequence that I really loved, just because no fucking reason, Giant Man just stomps on one of the children of Thanos. It's like one of these guys that gave him complete hell in Infinity War, and he just steps on them.
Yeah.
I was like, that's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that ending is that's gonna be the one, and I think the Russo brothers may have been the ones who said it. Someone has always talked about, like, they remember being in an airport and people just watching fight scenes from a movie, fast forwarding through the movie and watching fight scenes. And that's going to be one that if it ends up on YouTube or whatever, I can watch the 4K version of it. I'm excited to watch that fight scene again and pause it and actually be able to take it in and be like, oh, that moment's really cool. And I think that's what they did well, was make that thing just a moment of, like, kind of what they did in Ready Player One, where they're like, oh, all these things happening at one time. You know, spot the references. They did well at that ending with having a fun Where's Waldo.
Yeah, because there's, like, you don't actually get a full-on focus on Bucky until that last sequence where Cap's about to leave. He's at the funeral too, I think. But he is in that battle, and you see, like, him and his arm through some dust, like, but he's never focused on in that. So there is just a bunch of, like, little pieces coming together.
Speaking of that funeral scene, that was such a weird yet cool move. Like, because a lot of people are like, who's that, like, lone teenage kid standing off to the side?
From Iron Man 3.
Yeah. It's like, man, I forgot about that kid.
Yeah.
And then it's like, to have him at the funeral, I'm like, man, that's smart. I like that.
Yeah.
That was a good pick.
Yeah, but then you also have Nick Fury and Captain Marvel not talking or being near each other at that same scene. So some weird choices there as well.
They were both on the porch. They were probably.
It just was weird that they didn't have a moment after the whole thing of, like, her looking at Nick Fury's photo. They didn't have a moment. And I thought that was just even her putting her shoulder on his, hand on his shoulder. I was like, this is okay, but this is also a weird scene.
I feel like them being in proximity there means there is probably something that hit the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Or, I mean, there was just so much happening in this film that they're like, you know what? If we focus on their reunion, it takes away from the funeral of Tony Stark. So I can understand that play there.
That's true, because I got that very adorable cheeseburgers line. I couldn't have taken away time from that.
Yeah,
it's true.
It was good. I was next to some people that were just like, she clearly doesn't care that her dad died. It's like, no, kids don't know how to process trauma.
Now, there's some problems that this film creates for the MCU going forward.
Sure.
As far as, in my opinion, they'll never reach these heights again. And this is pretty much what we're doing a panel on at MobyCon.
Yeah.
But there's so many things in this movie that whenever you look at it, you're like, okay, cool. I don't know if I'm going to care about these movies going forward. Because now you've introduced time travel into the whole thing, which means that anything at any given point is inconsequential.
No, it's not.
It can't be. But
I guess I don't think it could be here, though. I don't think they're that smart.
That smart?
Honestly, to then reuse time travel again, they've been infamous for dropping plot points and stuff like that. I think that's going to be one that gets lost in the shuffle with all the stuff, maybe until Secret Invasion.
Yeah, they'll bring it back in 5 to 10 years and be like, don't you guys remember that we can time travel?
I hope that's the way it works. But another thing that I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just realised we hadn't spoken about Paul Rudd at all, and obviously he's the guy that is most obviously connected with all the time traveling. So I'm just going to give a shout out to Ant-Man. That was all.
Oh yeah, and the original Ant-Man, because the Michael Douglas cameo in this movie is great.
And you've got that stupid original Ant-Man helmet.
Yeah.
That was pretty rad.
No, but I think that can tie into what Gerald's saying, because I do think you said you were going to be kind of disinterested, but I do think that they've set up a lot with Paul Rudd. I do think his movies need a better director. But I think he is going to be a good point. I think Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Spider-Man, they have these good characters going forward that I'm interested in the next 5 years with them. Maybe not the next 10 years, we'll see, but I'm curious of what they've set up here at least.
I mean,
I'm ready for Guardians 3 with Chris Hemsworth. Yeah. And also, in fairness, I guess one of the major plot points is going to be Chris Pratt going to find Gamora and like re-woo her. And like, because that was 2014 Gamora.
Which is a little weird, right? That can't be what they do with
that. It's a little bit 51st Dates, Marvel, not going to lie.
Or maybe they'll go like the Searcher Spock route with it. Like maybe they'll just go weird, just traveling for her, but maybe try to find the Soul Stone version of her. Maybe, I don't know.
They would have to do that because they can't like have him wooing a completely different version of her.
You mean James Gunn can't handle a female character, right, in his movies? Oh my God.
Well, maybe that, but like that's weird.
Again,
that's like
she's the worst handled out of all of them usually in those movies. So kind of be on par with them, just making them awkwardly fall in love again.
But that's like if your wife died and you started dating her twin sister. Like, because clearly, like they're different people. It operates differently. Nebula kills her past self, so and still lives. So clearly, it's just a different universe. It's a different person.
That was my big plot point to come up with. I thought that was weird that she could kill herself and be alive. But then I know they made all those self-referential jokes about like, oh, what film have you been watching? Hot Tub Time Machine, Back to the Future, and all these different ones. But I did find that weird. Surely you would die.
They created like 4 parallel timelines.
Yeah.
With this film, and that's one of my biggest problems.
One of which has a Thor that is out his hammer for no good reason.
No, that I understand, because when Captain America's going back to replace the time stones, he takes the hammer. So he probably replaces it at the exact same time.
Probably, yeah.
So that I'm fine with.
The Nebula one, can Nebula, because she's an android, is that why they can get away with most of it? Because she is kind of the most not real of them.
Yeah.
So I thought that's why I thought they could get away with her killing that. It's because she's kind of not a person. Like, sorry to be anti-android there.
She is a person. It's they replaced her parts with.
I kind of forget how much. If she's like 75-25, or like if she is just okay.
It's because it's a divergent timeline, and they created another timeline where Nebula dies, but that doesn't affect this Nebula because it's completely different. It's a completely different reality.
But the biggest thing, like, there's 2. Like I said, I wanted to go back to when they're at the Battle of New York. Of course, we've got Loki just like fucking right off with the Tesseract, which, you know, everybody could be like, oh, that leads to the Disney Plus stuff. That's fine, but, you know, it also screws up that reality. On top of the fact that in that same reality, we now have everyone believing that Captain America is with Hydra, or they were just outed, either way. So now everything that happened beyond the first Avengers, like Winter Soldier, couldn't have ever happened.
Now I just want them to go back and make a bunch of movies, these alternate timelines.
I don't want that at all. Like,
no,
if that could be what that What If series is about, though. That would be great.
That would be a good setup to the What If.
Actually, that is good.
That's what I want.
I just think, though, this kind of goes in with the fluff, and you guys being shocked that this is being more liked with, you know, critics. I think all this time travel stuff was purely for this movie, and I don't think it had the consequences it has. I don't think it's really going to last, and I do think it's going to have to take some people to just be like, this just happened. Don't think too hard about it. And I'm usually one to like give Marvel more flack for that, but I think in this context, they just did the time travel, and I don't know if it really is going to be a ramifications, because all the characters all the time travel stuff, really, they're all not around anyway. So like, I don't really have to see what happens with, you know, Cap in the Hail Hydra stuff, because I'm not going to see Cap in movies anymore.
I mean, I can understand where you're coming from with that, but the only reason why it bothers me is the fact that this is the 22nd movie where the one thing that, set these movies apart from any other series really is hyper continuity.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to be like, okay, and now everything that happened in this film, just kind of put that out
On
of your
this last
mind
one,
as we
we're
go
gonna-
forward.
We're gonna break the continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't bother me that much. It's a fun thing to think about, but like they put it together in such a way where they're like, don't think about it. Just roll with it. Just let it happen.
I don't know. And it's like another part that bothered me whenever Spider-Man rolls back up to his high school, and it's just like all of the high schoolers are still the same age.
Yeah, presumably they all got snapped too.
Every high school.
Yes, every high schooler.
I wanted to see like one 23-year-old walking around with his backpacks like I haven't gone to school in 5 years. So here we are.
we just canceled school. I guess all of his friends that end up in the next movie all got snapped too because
though they have said this next Spider-Man movie is the official end of Phase 4, so they might address some of that craziness there, because I thought that was weird, but I do feel like that was something that hopefully that they would acknowledge. Not that I again kind of slagged off Marvel and then going to be like, I hope that they can do this, but I think that's something that they're going to touch on a little bit.
Oh, and just a real quick, I want to get this in there. Just a real quick fuck you to Sony for their marketing of Homecoming or whatever this one, Far From Home, because there's literally 3 characters that have permanent deaths in this film, and their marketing spoiled one of them.
What's that?
Because they showed Happy and even Pepper in the marketing for Far From Home.
Did they?
Yeah. And it's, kind of
Happy,
like, dealing with the fact that Tony's not around.
Huh.
So it's like, you know what? In the back of everyone's mind, it's like, if they bring everybody back, why ain't he here?
Yeah. I don't know.
So fuck you, Sony.
Yeah, and fuck all those Spider-Man movies anyway. I super do not like this version of Spider-Man. And
I
that is
like
just
Homecoming.
full on cemented for me.
Oh, it was nice
You
to
don't
see
like
Aunt
him?
May at the funeral.
I'm a really big fan of Tom Holland.
Yeah, I like him.
Not his movies, because like Homecoming I'm hit or miss on. But something about him I think is I think
endearing.
Especially endearing. I think, and after this, I think he gets his Uncle Ben moment now, because they kind of passed over Uncle Ben in Homecoming, which is fine. I didn't need to see the Bruce Wayne parents die again thing.
I didn't need to see that again, but I did need like the ramifications for it to exist, and not the like I'm out to impress Tony Stark. Like,
but I do think now we do get our own version of the Uncle Ben moment, because I think that's going to be hopefully the arc they take with him. Not that I think we need emo Peter Parker in Far From Home, but I do want to see him deal with grief now finally, and not just the Uncle Ben that we've seen from other movies, or what we think of his own version that they've set up in these movies. And I think that's where they focus so hard on him and Tony.
Yeah, but his grief and guilt is like core to that character. Again, I don't need to see that sequence again, but that like the death of Uncle Ben is core to Spider-Man's motivations, not him being like, oh, well, I want to impress Tony Stark. I got to impress Mr. Stark. I got to impress Mr. Stark. Mr. Stark. It's awful. It's like Tom Holland's good. He's fine. He was good casting. This is the worst written Spider-Man ever. I would rather watch Spider-Man 3 1,000 times than to watch any of these Spider-Man movies.
My only problem, because we've had this conversation a lot between you and I off air. The problem is that's his character arc in that movie, man, is going from wanting to impress Tony Stark to just by the end of it, he's like, you know what, I'm just doing this to keep the people I care about safe.
Yep, the problem is it's bad, and that's not Spider-Man.
And that's it. Gavel down.
No.
I like that arc. That's all I'm saying.
It's fine. I don't want to turn this into a bitch fest about that Spider-Man. we'll do that in a couple months. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on about this movie? It's such a massive movie that I doubt we'll have covered everything.
We could have done like more time talking about the movie than the runtime of the movie if we wanted to.
Yeah, but we're coming up on the 2-hour mark here.
Yeah.
I think, we've hit so much great stuff. I think everything we talked about is the stuff that I think has stuck with us. So I think that's why I like hearing our podcast, to hearing other people's Endgame podcasts too, is just to hear everything that they personally took. Because with a 3-hour movie, I don't think everyone should, the Tony Stark sacrifice moment. There is moments that everyone's going to take away, but I really enjoyed hearing all of your guys' like personal ones that stuck with you, because those are stuff that I'm like, if it didn't work for me, and then I have stuff that completely worked for me. Like I love the Air Force moment, and I love to hear that, like you guys, especially hearing Tori didn't, where I love hearing a woman thought it was pandering. So it made me look at it, be like, you know what? Yes, it slightly was. I'm not going to say I still didn't go yes when it happened, but it was interesting. I really enjoyed hearing like all your stuff that you guys took away from it.
Yeah, I thought it was a great send off for Robert Downey Jr. I liked his whole arc
Yes.
throughout the movie. I thought they were going to give him a little more conflict with like doing the time travel would reverse him having a kid.
Yeah, I thought he was going to lose her, because again, I was thinking of all the other films. I was like, but don't all of these other films, doesn't this canon teach us like you have to conceive, have the exact right moment with the exact right sperm and egg to create that child? So,
Yeah.
But they can't. Yeah, that seemed to be too complicated for them, so they just brushed that aside. And he died instead.
But I like them going back. I like them bringing John Slattering. Is his name? Who plays Howard Stark. I liked them giving him that moment with his dad. I thought that was good.
That is the moment I knew he was dying. As soon as they did that, though, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
It all started to, like, click. And I was like, oh, okay. Which is, again, I like those moments where you start going, huh. And then you start, because at one point I was like, oh, this is good. I hate this character, but I am getting a little like, oh, no, it's coming, isn't it? Oh, no, Doctor Strange, don't point at him. Oh, no.
But the big three got great character arcs, character development, and then character endings for two of them. So, like, in a movie this big and messy, like to have that good of character work in it, I thought was great. So.
Yeah,
I think that about sums it up.
We are drained of Endgame, which is nice, because I've been trying to save all these talking points for a while. So
yeah, and we just kind of we had a weekend seeing it twice. 6 hours of the past few days.
That's a significant lump of your weekend.
Yeah, like it's been devoted to this, and it's just been kind of stewing there. And I haven't wanted to talk about it online too much because I wanted to get it all out on this.
Yeah.
Now keep in mind, 6 hours of screen time, like not even taking into account getting to the theaters and dealing with previews and lines and concessions.
The other people.
Yeah, so a whole work day at least of my time was devoted to this across this weekend. But yeah, it's great. It's a great cap on the this run so far.
The MCU will never reach these heights again.
I wouldn't say that. We still got Fantastic Four.
The MCU will never reach these heights again.
Honestly, Gerald, I don't know, because look at Star Wars. I think, not to say the prequels were the greatest things to ever come, and before we knew that they were trash, look at all the hype that went in. Look at all the hype that went in with Force Awakens. I think with a good 10 years of building, I think it's hard to say that now, because I think it could. I think with some addition of some X-Men characters, some Fantastic Four, at one point, I do think we could see something this again 10, 15 years. I think there's something. I don't want to place a bet on it.
I'm going to go ahead and
place a bet on it for the future.
I'm going to go ahead and use the example you just used. You talk about the hype going into these movies, not the feelings people had coming out of them.
Yeah. But I will say I joke about the Fantastic Four, but I mean, I love the Fantastic Four, but I don't think a lot of people will or care. But the cosmic ideas that come along with that, like we've got to have a Galactus movie, we get a Doctor Doom, like the villains that they have yet to use, that they can use now. Some of them they could have used and just haven't used yet. Like there's still plenty of villains that could deliver something big, and it all depends on how they build the characters that they have now, like the protagonists, and how much they make us care, whether we'll feel this way when they cap off whatever they're doing for these next 10 years.
I don't know how I'm gonna feel as a they'll be like close to 50 whenever they wrap up the next full arc if they do the same thing again.
But like, I mean, going into this, nobody cared about Iron Man pre 2008.
Oh no.
no one cared about Iron Man. No one cared about Thor, really. Captain America, I'm sure, had his fans, but like those were big for comics people, but those weren't big for people outside of that. Like, I didn't think an Iron Man movie was going to do particularly well. It just so happened to be a really good movie.
I still honestly believe that this is the pinnacle of film until the heat death of the universe.
Okay.
Not the best film, but as far as just like the wide reach and the hype going in, the excitement people have had coming out. I don't see anything matching this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's huge, and maybe it doesn't need to be matched. I don't know.